Welcome to Differentiated Life, Session 7. Now, my name is Catherine Kissel and I'm a counselling psychologist. And during this time, when we're all confined to our homes, I've decided to offer regular therapy sessions via Facebook as my way of supporting the wider community. My clinical approach is all about enhancing our differentiation. So my videos think about a live issue that we're facing and offer some practical tools to help you take a step towards a differentiated life. So today's challenge is what to do when your kids' demands are relentless and you keep giving in. I am always amazed at the negotiating power of children. I am astounded how my son is able to turn anything into a negotiation, and I find myself tied up in knots before I've even realised what's happened. And in lockdown, well, some people might say it's easier. There's less stuff. We're not going out to the shop. There's less things to ask for. But for other people, well, you might find your kids are around all day. You just never get a break from them. They can come up with even more clever reasons about why they ought to go on the Xbox. It's the only way they can connect to their friends. You're trying to work and you do anything to stop them hassling you. You're more stressed out anyway. And perhaps you just don't want to hear them whining anymore. I always felt like I used to use quite an empathic parenting style. I would be quite flexible, I would listen to their views, I would empathise with their needs. And if it seemed reasonable, okay, I'll adjust. And for quite a few years, this seemed relatively successful. They're both still alive. But I reached a point where I realised that more and more frequently I was left feeling irritated with an unpleasant taste in my mouth, like I'd been played. They had got what they wanted, but I hadn't. They had negotiated tidying up the lounge an hour later, but I actually wanted it done now. They had got that extra hour on the PlayStation that they wanted, but you know what? It had made you more unpleasant and stubborn, and it did lead to more conflict rather than less, and I really wish you hadn't pushed me into it. You might find that frustration takes you from calm to angry. But I think boundary setting is a classic example of a scenario where so often we know what we should do, but we don't do it. Or perhaps more frequently, we know what we should do and we start to do it and then we give in. And I think one of the reasons it can be so hard to set and hold boundaries, particularly with our children, is that it engages with our deepest vulnerabilities. But the great news is that every time we establish a healthy boundary, it's a profound act of differentiation that benefits both you and your kids. You might not feel like holding the line on sitting at the table at meal times or sweet consumption is particularly profound, but there's something about boundaries that captures the essence of what it means to live a differentiated life. It's an act of identity, an act of connection, and an act of responsivity. So as an act of identity, it poses the question, am I allowed my needs, or is it only my child who is allowed theirs? As an act of connection, do I want happy family fusion over and above real connection? And as an act of responsivity, am I prepared to dig deep and hold on to my emotions, not bind them by giving in? So what do I mean by an act of identity? I think that raising a child is one of the most selfless acts that we can do. Think back to all the times of the sleepless nights, the feeding on demand. But as children grow up, it's a process of individuation, and to enable children to learn to tolerate others' needs, we need to bring ourselves more into the picture. Us being part of the picture means that they get to learn how to manage frustration, to learn patience, to recover from disappointments, and to appreciate the other's perspective. But I think as a parent, that process of asserting our own needs can be really challenging, particularly when we're other-focused, when we're more sensitive to our child's pain than our own. think many of us know, if we're parents, that our children's pain can be like a kick in the teeth. We feel it all the way through our body. And when we feel their pain, it can be really difficult to hold a boundary. So setting a boundary is an act of identity because it involves being clear about what you want, irrespective of what they want. Whether it's everyone sat at the table at meal times, every Friday your bedrooms are tidied, or maximum 2 hours on the Xbox. What about an active connection? Well, when I realised that I needed to rethink my approach to boundary setting, I spent a lot of time journaling. I wanted to try and understand what was going on in me that made it hard for me to set a non-negotiable boundary. And I realised not only was I more attentive to other people's needs rather than my own, I also recognised just how much I wanted to be loved. When they were angry, irritated or frustrated at me, a cavernous hole of fear seemed to open up. It was a wonderful mix of fear of failing as a parent and fearing abandonment by my children. I was scared that if I held to the no, they would hate me. All I poured into them would be for nothing. I wanted to be nice mummy. I didn't want to be nasty mummy. I wanted to be tightly joined with them, a collective, one big happy family. And I was enacting differentiation's concept of fusion rather than connection. Fusion is the idea that we try to create unanimous agreement, in this example by me giving in order to bind the anxiety that I felt about upsetting them, as opposed to a healthy connection where we can tolerate different opinions and remain in relationship. So setting boundaries is an act of connection. We can have different opinions and share them. I can listen to you and empathise with you, but I don't have to change my view, even if that means you might get upset. I know that having a limit on iPad time feels unfair, that your friends get far longer than me, that I'm annoying, that I don't understand. However, I've thought about it, and that's my decision. And an act of responsivity, that in spite of the anxiety you feel when your child hates your decision, you can still make that decision and hold to it calmly, even when your child pushes every button in the book to make you change your mind. So if you're feeling fed up with giving in to your child's demands, let's take one issue at a time, whatever it is, tidiness, schoolwork, whatever. Bring to mind a time when you've tried to set a boundary in place for this issue and it's failed. And now I want you to identify, what did you really want? I wanted the house to be tidied up at the end of every day. I wanted schoolwork to be completed before iPad time. Okay, make sure you're clear on that. And then think back to that time and think, what happened so that you didn't hold the line? Well, he got angry at me, and that made me upset. And I really wanted to make him happy, so I gave in. She just kept moaning, and I got fed up with it and overwhelmed because I needed to get on with my work, and I just wanted her to leave me alone. So I gave in. So I want you to use your focusing skills to connect with those feelings, to remind yourself that it's only a part of you, that those feelings don't control you, and that you can be bigger than them. And then I want to invite you to be a broken but empathic record. That's our connection element. Don't wait until the problem happens again and you're annoyed and everything escalates really quickly. Have a conversation about it when you're feeling calm. Say what you want. Listen to their negotiation. We're not railroading them into compliance, because bullying is just another method of that fusion, trying to make everyone agree. Restate your position calmly. Empathise with their frustrations. Clarify that this isn't a negotiation, this is what's going to happen. And then finally, make it matter to them. This is about placing the responsibility onto them, and I think this is the secret weapon to boundaries. You want to identify a realistic consequence that matters more to them than it does to you. So I have a silly example, but an example that's quite profound. My daughter, a few years ago, would simply not flush the toilet. Initially, it doesn't really matter. I kind of minimised it. I recognise my first tendency is often to be quite passive. It doesn't matter, it's fine. And then over time, I became irritated by it. I had to keep flushing the toilets. I had to keep cleaning them. And to be honest, no matter how many times I told her off or took away her pocket money, it made no difference. And also, I wasn't really very consistent at remembering. But when I was ready to hold the line, the only way to establish it was to make it matter more to her than it did to me. So I said to her, I want the toilet flushed. If I find a toilet unflushed, you have to clean it. So all of a sudden, I didn't care anymore about unflushed toilets. In fact, I loved them because then I had lots of clean toilets. And she hated it. So for a week, she tested me because that's the way she'll do. She wants to see me carry through my threat. So I would follow through. Every time I found an unflushed toilet, she had to clean it. And then it completely stopped. And several years down the line, I have to say I have had a mere handful of unflushed toilets left. So establishing boundaries can be a process of trial and error. And with children, boundaries change over time. Our children grow up. They need to be renegotiated. But with these simple tools, you can start to set boundaries in a way that honours both you and your child. Have fun trying, and I'll see you next session.